Hi, welcome everyone to the second part of this presentation on the Holy Bible and the Church. The learning objectives for this part is at the end of listening to this session, you'll be able to narrate how the Bible evolved to its present structure. You'll be able to discuss the relationship between the Old Testament and the New Testament. You will be able to discuss the relevance of the Old Testament for the Christian Church. You'll be able to discuss the Holy Bible integration, how it is used integratedly into the Orthodox worship. How did the Bible evolve? The Old Testament evolved through the life of the Jewish community. The Old Testament was being used by the early church, and Old Testament and New Testament have a common thread in them. It is a story of creation and redemption of humanity. Old Testament is considered the shadow of the New Testament. Now let's look at the history of Old Testament. Originally it was written in Hebrew over many years. When the Jews scattered to Egypt and many other parts of the world, those days Roman Empire was in power and Greek was their language. So they needed to have a Greek translation, and thus Septuagint, or the book translated by 70 persons into Greek, formed. There are 46 books in the Septuagint. The common use Bible or the Peshitta Bible in Syriac is also having 46 books in the Old Testament. Let's look at the history of Holy Bible in the Christian Church. The first Christians were Jews who followed Jesus. Early church used the Peshitta Bible or the Syriac Bible of common use, which was dependent on the Septuagint. Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches even today continue the tradition. Later on, Jews finalized their Hebrew Bible with 39 books to differentiate themselves from the Christian community which was using the Peshitta Bible. When the Reformist Protestant movements happened, they came up in 14th century. They also decided to choose the 39 book Hebrew Bible as their Old Testament to differentiate themselves from the ancient church which was using the Peshitta Bible. Now let's look at how the New Testament evolved. After the resurrection of Christ, Christians came together for praying. They primarily started with breaking the bread after the practice Jesus established on the feast of Passover. This evolved into what we participate in today as the Holy Kurbana. The early Christians heard directly from Jesus' disciples stories and teachings of Christ during these worships. Later on, as years passed, they wrote it down for the next generation. This became the present New Testament over 400 years. Today, we read both the Old and the New Testaments in our worships. The history of the New Testament has more to go. The first written books of the New Testament are St. Paul's letters or epistles, which were written from about 48 to 64 Common Era. Then came the Gospel of Mark, which is known to have been written around 60 to 75 of the Common Era. The oldest available manuscript today of the Bible is a piece of John's Gospel, which is from the 2nd century. Multitude of copied manuscripts are available from which the present New Testament has been compiled by the Church Fathers with the help of historians and manuscript experts. No original text written by any of the authors are currently available. Athanasius, the Bishop of Alexandria, is the first one to list the books of New Testament into 27 and canonize it for the first time in 367 AD. Saint Jerome is the one who translated the New Testament into Latin, known as the Latin Vulgate. Vulgate means common use. The Codex Sinaiticus, or the Sinai Bible, is the oldest complete Bible that is available now. It is a 4th century manuscript. All currently available manuscripts are handwritten copies of originals which may have been destroyed due to nature or accident or whatever process. Let's look at what is the Apocrypha. Apocrypha means doubtful authenticity. There are apocryphal books in Old Testament and New Testament. There are different thoughts about which books belongs and which are the groups of apocryphal books. Different authorities consider different groups of books as apocryphal. When the canon of the Bible was finalized by early church fathers, they isolated the apocryphal books from the Holy Bible because of their authenticity, which was doubtful. Today, the most popularly seen Bible is the Bible Society Bible. Bible Society is a Protestant initiative after Reformation in 15th century. It's a non-profit, non-denominational society of Christians engaging in translation, printing, and distribution of the Holy Bible. It was first formed in 1804, named as the British and the Foreign Bible Society, primarily meant for the Welsh people. Now we have the United Bible Society, which has 150 members all over the world. The first printed Bible was made by Johannes Gutenberg in the 1450s. It was a copy of the Latin Vulgate. Bible societies made printed Bibles in the present format and distributes it all over the world through the 19th to the 21st centuries. Let's see what is the relationship between the Old and the New Testaments. They are both continuous story of creation and redemption of humanity. The Old Testament is the shadow of the New Testament, and New Testament is a continuation of the Old Testament. Numerous quotations from the Old Testament are found in the New Testament. Both the Old and the New Testament speak about the same God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Both books speaks about chosen people. Jews in Old Testament and Church in New Testament form the chosen people. Incidents in the New Testament are predicted in the Old Testament. Prophecies of the Old Testament are fulfilled in the New Testament. New Testament took shape in a church that was worshipping using Old Testament. Relevance of the Old Testament to Christians. The historical roots of the church. Because the church was started as a Jewish community which opened up to non-Jewish people and eventually to all humanity beyond caste and race. Old Testament reminds and underscores the historical past of the church. The storyline of creation and God's love will be incomplete without the Old Testament. God's commandments given in the Old Testament are still valuable for the Christian church. It is the rigid explanations and observances that Jesus challenged and the church rejects. God's commandments in the Old Testament are explained and manifested in the New Testament as the expressions of His love. New Testament leads the church to understand that God's love is grace which is freely given to all, and it is not earned by observances of the law, as Paul says in Romans 6:15. Being chosen in the New Testament means chosen in grace and acceptance of this grace by the humans. Choice is not on a racial basis. Now, here we are looking at how the Orthodox Church integrates the Holy Bible into its worship. The Orthodox Church is the ancient church continuing the apostolic faith and traditions to date. Liturgy of worship using formulated prayers written by the church fathers and biblical quotations forms one important characteristic of the Orthodox Church. The Holy Bible has a special designated place for display in the church and at the Madbaha or the Holy of Holies in the church. Readings from the Old Testament, Gospels and Epistles are practiced in the Orthodox worship. As per a calendar, we plan the readings. This calendar reminisces the life of Christ from birth to ascension and the Pentecost day. The Holy Spirit came on and the church was formed on the Pentecost day. All the Orthodox prayers and songs are infused with verses from the Holy Bible. Thank you for listening. Please go back and listen if you want to understand more. Thank you.